the guy that just came? He said he's...
I actually didn't hear what he said.
Oh, he said he's one of like the... I didn't understand it either. He said he's with the party or something? I don't know.
And Piker was kicked out of the DNC after a series of provocative moves and statements. First, Hasan made a bold statement by wearing a Palestinian flag belt, controversial given the party's divided views on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. He also interviewed uncommitted delegates, possibly stirring dissent within the party. On top of that, Hasan openly criticised Israel during his stream and argued for redirecting US tax dollars from military funding to domestic issues like infrastructure. This seems like a shift away from the pro-Palestinian leanings of the party's base, suggesting an emergency gear change to push the message back towards a more centrist stance, especially in favour of Israeli support. These actions likely clash with the DNC's agenda, leading to his removal. Was this damage control? Could it signal that the Harris campaign, lacking substance beyond race and gender, is trying to distance itself from the far left to appear as...
So why did this guy get kicked out of the DNC? Before Hasan's fans come in here and just go off and ratio this video or whatever, which, by the way, I wanted to make this video anyways, knowing that that was a possibility. I want you guys to hear just this much first before we go any further. This right here is not a video that's designed to criticize Hasan or criticize any of his takes. It's just a video designed to tell you the truth, the real truth, the hardcore truth of why it is that the Democratic Party is, let me just go ahead and say, always going to try to push you to the side, that right there being the much, much more far left side, or the Free Palestine side. Now, really quick, before we get started, I want to go ahead and say this. It was day 4 of the DNC, and reports came in that morning. And of course, you guys are seeing some footage from day 1 and day 2, some of the protests. There was even some protests the night before. And of course, the mainstream media went out of their way not to cover those protests, which of course is also one of the reasons why it is that, well, you guys will figure out in a minute. On day 4, that morning, it was announced that the Democratic National Convention did not want somebody from the Palestinian side of the aisle to speak on what was going on. They didn't want that. Now, let me say this really quick. The Democratic Party is a party that they have decided to hinge their base on different, let's just say different little voting groups. Different little voting groups. What I mean by different little voting groups, I mean single issue voters. You've got the extremely pro-abortion side. You've also got, not only that, you've also got the voting rights side. You've also got the legalization side. You've basically got multiple different single issue voters inside of one single tent. The thing is this right here, though. If said party loses 1 to 2 cogs in the machine does not work properly, and therefore the machine does not win. Now, before we get started, I want you guys to know that some of this content came from a YouTube channel called Grifter. Some of this came from a YouTube channel called Piers Morgan Uncensored. I'm pretty sure we all know who Piers Morgan is because they're definitely going to be going back to his interview with Hasan, the one from earlier this year. And, of course, also to go on top of this, there's also a small little bit that came from Actual Justice, where all 3 channels will be linked in the description box. I advise you guys go give them a shot, even if you want to, I don't know, hate view or whatever, go right ahead and do so. Or if you're fans of them, hey, make sure you guys subscribe and give them a thumbs up. Same thing with me. But still, though, the point is, we got to get to why it was that Hasan Piker was kicked out from the DNC.
Where would put
What's up?
Where we put gas?
We don't know.
You're the person
I think we can go to meme.
So I wanted the political director was here. I just wanted to kind of figure what happened.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we're good. Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure.
Okay. Yeah. Wait, what? What was that? What just happened?
The utter shock in Hasan's face as he realized he has just been kicked out of the DNC in front of...
Here's the reason why. It's because the Democratic National Convention does not want, and this is kind of contradictory because they're gearing their entire campaign towards this side of their base, yet at the same time they also want these type of influencers gone. They don't want the more radical elements on display for people to see. I mean, there's even this moment where Hasan is actually getting interviewed by a guy from the New York Times, and you can kind of see him looking at his phone the whole time. And of course, he's asking him questions, which of course I'll probably play the clip for you guys a little bit later on in the video here in a second, where, yeah, it looks to me like what's really going on is that there are people there who are sending him information on Hasan himself. And then eventually, Hasan is asked to leave said spot. Now, they originally said that it was designed to be a spot where Hasan Piker could interview AOC, but later on, you found out that it was not the case. It was actually for them to interview Pete Buttigieg. Let me play that bit for you guys.
DNC gave you credentials. You don't say, Mr. New York Times. Isn't it awfully interesting that Hasan has his credentials revoked just minutes after this guy says this? Hasan is currently under the impression that he only has to move because the location has been double booked. The staffer says AOC is going to be doing an interview there, not knowing that the interview is supposed to be with Hasan. So the staffer abruptly changes that story to actually it's Pete Buttigieg that might be happening.
That clip there came from Grifter's channel. He actually looked into it and saw that this is basically what was going on. They didn't want Hasan there, or they allowed Hasan to be there, but then they figured out who he was. Bad job of vetting by the DNC. It's almost as if to say the RNC would have the exact same problem with, say, someone like, I don't know, like Fuentes or something like that. They wouldn't want him out there, especially given the fact that the RNC is definitely much, much more pro-Israel, where it is the DNC tries to say that they're pro-Israel, but at the same time tries to cater to the pro-Palestinian side, even though, obviously, when you try to play both sides of the aisle, after a while, it will stop because both sides of the aisle just realize you're not really and truly on their side, and they just walk away. Or they view you as weak. That right there is the way that I've always viewed it, or at least the way I've always seen it, or the way it's always been said to me by people on both sides of the aisle. Because contrary to popular belief, I have spoken to people who do think the opposite of me. I hear from them all the time. I do live in a college town. However, the thing is this right here, and this right here is what I need to say out loud. The Democratic Party does not want these types there. I mean, look, there's this little bit of Hasan Piker interviewing Cori Bush. Didn't Cori Bush, a member of the squad, recently get removed? Didn't she recently lose her primary to somebody who was backed by AIPAC? Didn't Jamal Bowman also lose to somebody who was backed? Never mind the fact that Jamal Bowman's district already had a lot of Israeli voters in it to kind of buoy up all non-colored voters. I'm just simply saying that it looks to me like maybe there's a certain movement out there that's saying, look, you need to fix your party if you ever expect to get any support from us. Do you think maybe it's possible that maybe that right there is the reason why it is that the New York Times reporter is looking at his phone when he's getting this bit of information? Do you guys think about that there? And then, of course, there's also these bits where Hasan was, how do I say, I'll play these right here for you guys here in a second, because to me, they're absolutely hilarious. It's very happening on night 3.
Online. And again, like I said, we're talking like 4 or 5 clashes with Chicago PD right now. They've been running through this part of Chicago trying to get away from police. They haven't been able to get it. We'll just show this once again, Tom, and send it back to you.
What the do you mean? They wanted the violence from the start? I'm about to say things that are going to get me banned from Twitch and also banned from the DNC if this keeps going. Oh my God, what the is this dumbass saying? You, dude.
Down this way as well. We've seen multiple people hauled away in handcuffs. But you're right. Yesterday was almost like a family friend.
Wow, it's so anti-Semitic to protest outside the Israeli consulate.
Side, but it was largely calm until at the end it devolved into that small group tearing down the Secret Service perimeter. This has been chaotic and violent from the start, and it seemed like exactly what organizers wanted when they arranged this, when they called people to attend online.
Complaining about the Democratic National Convention, you're complaining about their format, you're complaining about the mainstream media itself, and yet you expect these people to, how do I say, keep you there. Now, I could make fun of Hasan Piker over this, I mean, like crazy. I mean, there's a lot that we could draw from this. But it's typically not a good idea to make fun of the host. It's typically not a good idea to piss them off. If they get wind of this, they'll probably ask you to leave, especially the Democratic National Convention. Look, I have to quote another former Bernie bro in the name of H.A. Goodman to kind of help get this bit across. And, of course, some of you who may be on the left may have absolute disdain for H.A., but H.A. was not lying. He was telling the truth. The Democratic Party needs to get rid of you for them to survive long term. So they're trying to get rid of you now. There's just certain people that they quite frankly can't get rid of. Like, say, AOC, for example, lives in the district so blue, she'll be the nominee regardless. Same thing with Ayanna Pressley, and the same thing with Ilhan Omar, who lives in the district that's like 80% Somali. So obviously they're going to support the Somali candidate. If they could find a Somali candidate who was not as radical as Ilhan Omar, trust me, they would replace her. Same thing with Rashida Tlaib. By the way, of all the members of the squad that's set to be released, I think Rashida Tlaib is the next one that they're probably going to want to get to go. But still, though, at the same time, though, this right here is why the DNC asked Hasan Piker to leave. They asked him to leave because he represents a certain faction of the base that they don't want to put mainstream. Also, the rest of the stuff on night 4 that Hasan Piker was complaining about, which, by the way, anybody who's on the Free Palestine side, and you guys know me if you've been watching my content from the start, you know how I feel about that conflict. I've always been the guy who says who threw the first rock, regardless of how I feel or exactly how pro-Israel I may be. I'm always fair on this topic. If you throw a rock at somebody's house, don't be surprised if that person does not return fire with an even bigger rock. The point is this right here. When you go to the convention and you say stuff like what you're about to see here, yeah, it's very possible that these people may say, you know what, cut this guy off, get him the hell out of here.
Can have a Palestinian person, an individual with family members come and speak in this similar fashion is disgusting to me. This conversation itself better turn around into one that specifically focuses on Benjamin Netanyahu and his disruptive attitude towards the ceasefire negotiations, or else I'm going to lose my fucking mind.
Or while somebody who is kin to a hostage who's still being held by Hamas is giving a speech, and you decide for whatever reason to start lamenting over the fact that the DNC said, yeah, it's probably not a good idea that we have a Palestinian speaker speak. Yeah, they're probably going to want you to leave.
They're chanting, bring them home.
At this moment, 109 treasured human beings are being held hostage by Hamas in Gaza. They are Christians, Jews, Muslims, Hindus, and Buddhists. On October 7th, Hirsch and his best friend Honor went to a music festival in the south of Israel. It was advertised as celebrating peace, love.
Bro, that's crazy. That's crazy that the Uncommitted movement, once again, making an incredibly modest proposal to have a vetted Palestinian speaker give a vetted speech, and it's always, of course, not happening. It's falling on deaf ears. Ta-Nehisi quotes on the Uncommitted movement, as of day 3 of the DNC, the Palestinian permission to narrate was still under consideration. The Democratic Party absolutely cannot maintain this apartheid structure in terms of like literally only having Israeli victims and their family members.
You shouldn't be surprised. However, there are other reasons why it is. There are other reasons why it is that they would practically look at Hasan Piker and say, you need to leave. Go back to what I was saying earlier about the New York Times reporter that was sitting beside him, and he was checking his phone during the entire time he was having a conversation with Hasan. What was he doing? He was getting information. He was getting information on this guy, because let's just go ahead and be honest. Not everybody gets their news from YouTube. Yes, it's true that most people get their news from social media. Typically, it's a Facebook post which has an article, or maybe even a Twitter post that has an article. They click on it, they read it, whatever. They get beyond the headline, and of course, they read into the details. And then they go back home, they get off work, they sit down, and what do they do? They typically tend to watch either CNN, MSNBC, or Fox. They listen to the commentary, whether it be Rachel Maddow on MSNBC, or Sean Hannity on Fox News, or even Aaron Burnett, or Caitlin Collins, who's got very, very low ratings on CNN. That right there is what they do. That is where they primarily get the vast majority of the decision making, because it's already designed. Like I said before, there's not really that many true independents left in the world. Just going to go ahead and say it. But the fact of the matter is this right here. The current Democratic Party right now does not want this side of the base to be on display, because they view this side of the base to be a little bit too irrational. I mean, Hasan Piker did have this bit where he said that Dan Crenshaw, a brave soldier, bleeped him in the eye and that America deserved 9/11. They don't want that on display. They also don't want the fact that he practically was, I wouldn't say he was jumping for joy, but he definitely wasn't exactly, how do I say, not unhappy about the assassination attempt on Trump. Yes, stuff like that there. And of course, also the reporting of the Israeli-Hamas war, which, by the way, he constantly gets inaccurate. There was also this funny bit where he talked about the hospital bombing. And of course, you had people online, which I understood why the hell people were confused about it. Why it was that people were screaming and going crazy saying Israel just bombed a hospital, when in reality, the rocket itself was actually a rocket that was fired by a member of Hamas. Now, some people are going to say that there's a load of BS, but let me go ahead and tell you right now, as a guy who's a combat vet who's been in the Middle East, and more often than not, it was probably a member of Hamas, and let me explain the reason why that's the case. You see, a lot of the weapons that Hamas has are hand-me-down weapons. A lot of them are old Soviet-style weapons that were actually made in the 70s and the 80s. So it shouldn't surprise anybody that a rocket is fired, it splits off, and one piece goes into a parking lot and the other piece goes into a field, which, by the way, is exactly what actually happened. That was what was later on determined by both the mainstream press, Israeli press, and even on-the-ground sources. Yeah, when the DNC began to properly vet Hasan Piker, they said, yeah, we need to get this guy out of here. Now, like I said before, you're probably thinking that I'm here crapping on Hasan, and you're probably thinking that I'm here to not only crap on Hasan, but also insult him. That's not what I'm doing. Even though I have a lot of things I disagree with this about, just about everything, but it could also be the fact that, I don't know, maybe the old bro footage may have been popped up, some of the stuff that he used to say. Let me go ahead and play this bit right here for you.
Oh, hey, didn't see you there. I'm Hasan Piker, and this is Bro Tip. This week's Bro Tip is about bringing out the alpha male in you. A few things to consider when you're thinking about Lady Gaga as the top contender for Babe of the Week should be the fact that she might have a penis. The fact that Lady Gaga might have a small penis does absolutely terrify me. Here's why the 5-second rule works. Because when you start thinking for longer than 5 seconds, you're immediately not thinking with your dick and also thinking with this pesky thing up here that we like to call our brains. So once you start thinking with your brain, you're immediately going to psych yourself out. Come back again next week when we discuss the legendary question of all time. Old enough to count, old enough to mount? Question.
Doesn't exactly fit the mold for the party that's supposed to be the champion of women. But let's also not forget, this is also the same exact political party that had Bill Clinton, a predator, on the stage, a former president, or Hillary Clinton giving a speech, who, by the way, helped cover up for that, or actually enabled Bill to do what he was doing. You see the contradictions here? You see Hasan Piker obviously just kind of got caught in the contradictions. But there is one thing I do have to criticize Hasan about, but not in mean spirit, not in ill spirit at all, but it's, of course, this little bit that came out recently about him getting upset about the fact that he was ranked very low on the truth-telling score when it comes to media. So with that right there being said, let's go to Sean Fitzgerald, because he made an absolutely hilarious video on this topic.
Trustworthiness, somebody that he goes after routinely, that is obviously going to pique his interest. That is obviously going to bother him. But when he pulls up this chart, he is aghast. And honestly, it's hilarious.
Apparently Joe Rogan is more reliable than you. What is this? Hold on. The new media bias thing came out. Is this for real? Wait, what? There's no way, dude. There is no way.
Now, to quote the great Anna Kasparian, my literal bestie, it's real.
It's real, guys. It's real.
Contains misleading info.
So first of all, I think it is important for everybody out there in the audience to understand that contains misleading info actually is soft-pedaling it when you don't realize the context in which that was framed. I actually have the chart from August 2024 from this organization that is ranking.
Okay, now really quick, let me tell you what I think is hilarious. And I don't know if Sean actually covered this or not, but let me tell you what I think is absolutely hilarious about this entire situation. If you look at the chart, you see Hasanabi, you see his image next to one, or it's right there in between one talk show and the other one that says useful idiots. I can't remember if Sean covered that in the video. I can't remember if he did that or not. I've watched it 3 times and I don't recall him saying it. I'm just trying to give him the benefit of the doubt. It's not just because I think Sean's content is good or anything. Don't worry, the video will be in the description box. Please don't put a DMCA claim in. But still, the point is this right here. I think it's hilarious that his face is right there in between, and you have right there on the left, or what would be his actual left, but would be my right. I just find it hilarious that he's right there next to the useful idiots emblem. Just something that I noticed, but let's continue.
Surprise when he discovers he's ranked as a propagandist. But honestly, fact check me on that. That is absolutely false. He is ranked below a propagandist. They're saying that he is worse than a propagandist, which is the category that he aspires to be in. That is pretty...
Which brings me to my final point. Look, here's the thing about the news. When you go on YouTube, you're going to get commentary primarily, okay? I want to say that it was one bit in that video that Sean had where apparently Hasan was also ranked slightly lower than Steven Crowder. Crowder classifies himself more as a comedy show, And of course, Crowder typically tends to always have the sources linked in the description box. I haven't seen that with TYT or any of the left-wing networks, but then again, though, I have seen this with the more conservative outlets in some cases, not all, but still, though, the point is this right here. And I always link the articles, everything in the description box of my video as well, so that way you guys can go check them out. But the thing is this right here. If you know your show, if you know your YouTube channel, if you know what you're presenting as propaganda, then why not just go ahead and be honest and say that you're coming at this from a leftist point of view? The same exact way I go ahead and tell you guys right off the bat, I'm coming at this from a rightward point of view. I mean, which is kind of funny too, because when Hasan Piker went on Piers Morgan, he basically said exactly that.
It's interesting that you call me a propagandist, because I want to play you. This was your reaction to when the hospital got
I'm
bombed.
a propagandist.
Well, no.
For the record.
I'm not calling
I'm a
you that.
propagandist.
I'm just saying. I'm going to play you.
I'm saying I am.
Okay, well then I want to
I'm saying I am.
I just
before
want to
you
put
even play it.
Okay, I'm going to play the clip. This is your reaction to the bombing of the hospital. This was your reaction to when the hospital got
I'm
bombed.
a propagandist.
Well, no.
For the record.
I'm not calling
I'm a
you that.
propagandist.
I'm just saying. I'm going to play you.
I'm saying I am.
Okay, well then I want to
I'm
play.
saying I am.
I just
before
want to put
you
it,
even play it.
Okay, I'm going to play the clip. This is your reaction to the bombing of the hospital.
Why are you butthurt that people put you down there as a propagandist? Then again, at the same time, though, that could also be another reason why it is that the DNC practically wanted Hasan to, get the hell out. But the thing is this right here. The reason why it is that the DNC did not want him there is because they don't want the more radical elements at the convention. Which is funny, too, given the fact there were a lot of protests and even some riots and people breaking down barriers. The Free Palestine crowd does exactly what they always do, protest. Which is mostly what the left primarily does when they don't get their way. But still, though, at the same time, though, now you guys know the real reason why it was that Hasan Piker was removed. It's because the DNC, the Democratic Party, realizes that they can't win elections long term if they have people like Hasan Piker bashing them while at the same time preaching far leftism, making them look insane. That right there is the reason why they're doing it. I just find it hilarious that this guy got upset that these people asked him to leave, told him to get out of there, basically. Yet, here he was in the press box the entire time, insulting the party, insulting the party's platform, insulting the party's position on the Israel-Hamas war. And, of course, he has a past being with members of the squad who, quite frankly, they're trying to primary. It's politics. And what I would tell left-wingers is take it up with your own party. Go right ahead and do so. Of course, the right has things that, quite frankly, they're never going to see eye to eye with me on. But you don't see me out here burning crap and destroying stuff and criticizing the platform. No, I don't do that at all. I'm just a good right-wing NPC. And to all the people who think otherwise, piss off. With that being said, guys, make sure you guys please hit the like button, subscribe, share the video, sign off in the comment section. Please leave a comment. I'd love to hear what you guys have got to say, and I'll see you guys later.